Today's spotlight for Black History Month is on Wemimo Abbey. Many of the people I focused on so far have been folks from the long ago past, but Black history is still being made because Black history is American history. At only age 32, his list of accomplishments is very impressive. He was labeled the 2023 Entrepreneur of the Year. He's been on Forbes 40 under 40 list, 30 under 30 list. He's been named Bloomberg's new economy catalyst and has been named one of the 100 most intriguing entrepreneurs multiple times. Currently, his company, Isuzu Financial, is valued at over $1 billion. And core to his success and core to pretty much all of his enterprises has been community, fostering community and taking care of community. He has been invited to speak to the United Nations multiple times. He's spoken to Congress, all on behalf of people being more important than profits. Wemimo grew up in the slums of Lagos, Nigeria. He lived with his mother and his sisters after his father passed away when he was only 2. Despite being a single parent, she worked very, very hard to make sure that her children could still have a quality education. Much of her income went to making sure he could go to one of the best schools in the country. But while he was there, he was with many children who were a lot wealthier than he was. And he quickly learned that he would have to use his smarts in order to compete with his peers. From his intelligence, entrepreneurship was born at a very young age. The school he went to was a boarding school for people who were not local. And so many of his classmates couldn't leave the school grounds. But since he lived nearby, he could. And so when he found this out, he would take his CDs, his Game Boy games, all that stuff, and he would sell them to his classmates at a 300% markup because they could afford it and he could leave and go buy more. And so by age 14, he was already making more money than his mother did working at the post office. At age 17, Wemimo knew that he wanted to come to America to become educated and advance himself throughout life. And so he and his mother moved to Minnesota, where they faced a problem. As immigrants, they didn't have credit. And so in order to pay for the expenses of his first year of college, they had no choice but to take out a loan. Unfortunately, the loans that were being offered to people who were new to the country or folks who didn't have much credit were very, very predatory. And in fact, his mother ended up taking out a loan with a 400% interest rate. Dealing with this situation is actually one of the things that helped him decide to start Isuzu Financial, his billion-dollar company, because he wanted to find a way to kind of bridge the gap between people who hoard the wealth and people who really, truly just need some help to break through the systemic inequalities in our country. Wemimo was very serious about his education. He earned a Bachelor's of Science in Business Management from the University of Minnesota at Crookston, then studied public policy at UC Berkeley, and got his MPA in Nonprofit Management from New York University. While he was at New York University, he started one of his first companies called Clean Water for Everyone. The organization aimed to provide access to water for low-income areas by using local forms of drilling and pressure pumps to send water where it was needed most. At its peak, it provided water to 250,000 people in 7 different countries in the continents of Asia and Africa. A few short years later, in 2018, he decided to give up his very secure job in mergers and acquisitions to co-found the company Isuzu Financial. The core premise of Isuzu is where you come from, the color of your skin, and your financial identity shouldn't determine where you end up in the wealthiest country the world has ever seen, or really any country. However, knowing all too well that these systemic inequalities do exist, he's turned himself into sort of a justice capitalist, where people who do have a way to make change are actually doing it for the betterment of society and for their community. The basic idea is to not make those with privilege suffer, but create a more inclusive economy for those who are currently not included. And the way to do that, working within the system, is to make credit achievable. In the United States, your credit score is pretty much your lifeline. It is almost impossible to get a loan without one. You need a credit score for buying a house, renting an apartment sometimes, getting insurance, getting loans. All of these things require a credit score, and there are millions of Americans who don't have access to that. New immigrants to the United States and people from poorer backgrounds are often perceived as guilty until proven otherwise. And just based on appearances, they are denied getting credit because people will perceive that they will be a risky venture. Without ever being given a chance, they pretty much never have a way to get a leg up. Wemimo and his partner built Isuzu on the premise of using something that people do have in order to build credit: rental payments. Because in traditional credit scores, rental payments aren't used, even though you pay them every month, and they tend to be a very hefty portion of your income. Isuzu works with many of the country's largest property owners and reports their tenants' payments histories to credit rating agencies, and that way they can actually establish credit or build up their credit score. After being rejected over 300 times, Isuzu is now a billion-dollar company that has helped thousands of people establish a credit score and improve their credit score by huge numbers. On top of that, at the height of the COVID pandemic, Isuzu was responsible for $500,000 in interest-free loans to keep people from being evicted from their homes. The company also focuses on financial literacy and empowerment and actively helps to keep families who are working in their houses, no matter what. In 2022, he got married and he moved to California to support his wife's career. He is still deeply community focused, and one of his commitments is to eradicating homelessness. He has collaborated with the United Way in Los Angeles and has dedicated part of his future wealth to an eviction prevention fund so that he can help those in his community stay housed as much as possible. Wemimo Abbey said, "We owe it to those who came before us to break the shackles of systemic inequality. We've come too far to give up now. It's time we act together."